And we are live. Welcome to the NBA Deeper Dive. It is Tuesday, March 18th. I am Josh Engleman. I'm joined by DK. He's right here. We are brought to you by Stokastic. We got a promo for you if you're looking for the Portfolio EV tool. Really great deal, 68% off. We'll talk about that in a bit. But first, 4 games ahead of us today, all 4 of them locking at different times. 2.5 hours in between game 2 and 3. One game that looks absolutely dreadful, but it's a 4-game slate, so can you ignore it? We have a lot to break down for this one. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live, and follow us both on Twitter. DK, what's going on today, man?
Yeah, doing okay. Hoping to avoid ejections. I was telling you a little bit before, but yeah, I had a lot of money on Nemhard, played him in DFS, so that was pretty tilting. I had a bet too. I thought it was, so I had Russell Westbrook triple-double, and it was looking like I was going to miss because of points last night, but he got it at the very end. So that if he didn't hit that, I would have been literally full on crashing out. But yeah, it's a pretty shitty 4-game slate. We do have some news we're still waiting on. Think some indications on who's going to play or not. But yeah, still money to be made, I guess. Just again, hoping to avoid the bad variance.
You mentioned having trouble with ejections last night. We at Stokastic had problems with erections on playback. We got hacked yesterday on playback about 45 minutes in. They wiped us out. They put some porn on. It was rough. We did not want that to happen, that's for sure. I hope you guys enjoyed the hilarity of it all, but yeah, that didn't go well for us. That didn't go well for us at all. So I hope you guys were at least, if you found it funny at the very least. I never saw anything, unfortunately. I would have liked to laugh with everybody else, but I got the boot and got locked out immediately.
Yeah, I saw some funny comments like, oh, this is the lotion play of the day or something. Like, I don't know. Like the stuff that Greg and Eric do.
Yeah, it was very fitting for those kind of jokes, that's for sure. Didn't see that one. Yeah, somebody was real brokenhearted, as if I did it on purpose. That what a gimmick that would have been. All those yucks that I got out of it. I was happy it ended playback 15 minutes early. I got to go relax for a bit. But no, we're gonna hopefully never have that happen again. Coming back with the aggressively strong passwords moving forward. But today, we're here and we're breaking it all down. So let's get it started, because we are starting it off with the game of the day. As of this moment right now, obviously there's 100% ownership on every slate on DraftKings. 60% of the ownership is going to Atlanta and Charlotte. The other 40% is for the other 6 teams on this slate. Everybody's owned here. And we got to figure out who are the good ones, who are the bad ones, who should we avoid. So let's start with the Atlanta Hawks. They are 8.5-point favorites in Charlotte, 233 total. Highest total on today's slate, highest pace on today's slate by 2 full possessions in my model. And that is resulting in all of the ownership. We have 5 guys from Atlanta ranked in the top 8 right now. 40% ownership to Trae Young, 40% ownership to Dyson Daniels, 30 more for Onyeka Okongwu, 45 to Zachary Risashe, 40 to George Niang, and then 30 more for Terrence Mann, which says nothing for the 10% to Vit Krejci, Mo Gay, and Dominic Barlow. Everybody's getting it today from the Atlanta Hawks. Who is the best Atlanta Hawk today?
That's a good question. Who's my favorite? I think probably Niang here at 4,200. So you have like Risashe, Daniels, Trae Young, and Niang all around 40%. Niang, again, 4.2K minutes, pretty consistent for him in the mid to high 20s. Played 27 last game there against Brooklyn. He's a guy that has shown a ceiling, right? If he's playing really well, he's pushed for 30 minutes in a few of these games. So yeah, I think of the Hawks guys in this slate, I think Niang's my favorite, but you have to have interest in a lot of this team. Risashe, 4,400 stands out as a pretty good value. Last game, the minutes were pretty disappointing for him. Only played 22 minutes. He did deal with a little bit of foul trouble there in the first half. But the second half, again, the minutes really just weren't there. The game before that, though, played 36 minutes. Like the minutes on Risashe have kind of fluctuated a bit. So I think the range of outcomes are still relatively wide as opposed to like Niang. A bit more of a, I guess, safer, more secure minutes, I should say. So yeah, the ceiling's definitely there with Richeche, but the minutes not as secure. So I think I slightly prefer for Niang to Richeche.
Okay.
As far as like the spend ups go, you have Trey and Daniels, again, both around 40%. Obviously, the ceiling's massive on Trey. It's a great matchup. Dyson Daniels, second on the team right now in potential assists behind Trey Young, playing big minutes when he avoids foul trouble. So both those guys look pretty good. And then Okongwu at 7,500, also getting a bit of ownership there. The minutes for Okongwu without Clint Capella haven't really been like, they haven't ticked up a ton, but he should play somewhere in that like 30 to 32 minute range. So yeah, he's another pretty good option. But yeah, which one's your favorite of the Atlanta Hawks?
Oh, if we're talking based on all the data coming out of the Boom Bust tool, I honestly think it might be Risache because of the MPE. Like, I like Niang. These guys are basically projected for the same minutes. They're basically the same per minute guys. But I think having that small forward eligibility in addition to power forward on this particular slate is more valuable than it normally would be. And I think that's why we're seeing such a gap in the optimal rate between Risache and Niang. Risache is at 47%. Niang is at 37%. Now, like, they're obviously both great plays, but I think what we're seeing between those two guys is how valuable that extra position is, because we never really know. You don't really know what you're getting out of having the extra position and not having it. And for two guys that are basically projected the same, I think that's causing a little bit of the gap in the optimal. So I'm going to lean Risache for flexibility. But again, whether you're picking Niang, Risache, Okongwu, Daniels, or Trey Young, I think you can make a case that every single one of those answers is the correct answer for the Hawks. Yep. Maybe you want to say that it's not Okongwu because he's center only, and that's just a little bit different. But there's a reason those five guys are in the top 8. They're really hard to separate. And based on optimal, we have 243% optimal going to everybody on the Hawks. That implies that you're getting 2.5 Hawks in every lineup you're building. So the more likely scenario is you're grabbing 2 of these guys or 3 of these guys. And it honestly doesn't matter to me which 2 or 3 that I'm getting here. And that says nothing for whether or not we're going to Krejci or Gay or Barlow. Is there anybody you don't like?
I would say, I'm not a big fan of Mo Gay at 3,400 just because I don't really see the minute ceiling for him right now. I think we're going to get some value here in the Hornets. We'll talk about that in a sec. So, he's usually in the mid-teens. Like, there's times where he can push for around 20 minutes, but I don't really see the massive minute ceiling for him right now. So he's getting a little bit of love. Dominic Barlow also getting some love, basically strictly playing the backup to Okongwu. So again, I don't really see a massive ceiling on him either. So yeah, those two, they're getting a little bit of love. That Krejci getting a little bit of love as well. I'm not as excited on those, really cheap Hawks. Just again, I think we'll get some solid value opening up for Charlotte, which we'll talk about in a minute.
Yeah, 27 minutes at a Krejci in that last game with no Karis LeVert. Obviously, Karis LeVert out again today. Is he going to get 27 minutes again? Like, we got him in for 24, and that's why he's sort of pedestrian, but he could just as easily play a couple extra minutes here, right? That's sort of the problem. Like, Onyeka Okongwu, they are going to play their minutes, and I don't think there's really any ambiguity in it other than foul trouble or injury. Risache, Niang, Man, Vit Krejci. Like, I said it on the strategy show this morning. One of those guys is probably going to play like 3 or 4 minutes more than we expected. One of them's probably going to play like 3 or 4 minutes less than we expected. But I don't have a great feel of how to figure out which guy that is.
Yeah, agree there. Again, like Man and Krejci are pretty similar point per minute. I think I feel a little bit better about the minutes for Terrence Mann, and that's why he's getting a little bit more ownership. But yeah, there's definitely some volatility here. Again, of those guys that you mentioned, I think like the minute ceiling obviously is the highest in Richeche because we've seen like 36 and 31 minutes in 2 of the last 4 games for him. But yeah, like if like Krejci's playing really well, could he play, mid to high 20s minutes? For sure. Like we kind of saw that last game.
Do you anticipate having much exposure to Mo Gay or Dominic Barlow?
I don't think so. Because I think Charlotte, and then I think we'll get we'll talk about some Golden State value too, and maybe Boston as well, rating on the stats to Tatum.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else we want to touch on here. Chat, who do you like the most here from the Hawks? Where are you guys leaning? There's just it's just so much optimal in those top 6 guys. It's really crazy. Like, I feel like I'm underselling Terrence Mann, and he's 20% optimal and 27% owned, but like, he's ranked 16th. Oh, in our updated ownership and boom bust rates, which just came in, it's no longer 5 in the top 8. It is now 5 in the top 9. So things have changed dramatically.
Okay, yeah. I look at the updated ownership. Yeah, it looks pretty similar still, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and like, the answers after we asked, chat. Dyson and Zach. Okongwu, Niang, Trey. Like, that's kind of what I was expecting. I figured it was going to be this grab bag of everybody's random answers, and I think that's kind of what we're getting here out of Atlanta. You just need to have a lot of this, because this is by far the best spot on the day. So is the opposite side, I guess. You want to talk Charlotte?
Let's do it.
All right, so we do have a giant piece of information here. That is, LaMelo Ball is questionable now. They already don't have anybody any good. I don't mean to sell Mark Williams like that, but it's not like he's a creator. This is going to look disgusting if LaMelo's out, especially because if LaMelo Ball is in, he is currently projected for 50% ownership, 54% optimal, the number 1 play of the day. So let's just start here. Do you think LaMelo's playing?
I don't. And the reason I say that is because they called up Damian Bowe from the G League, kind of an indication that LaMelo's not going to play. Also, like, he was a late addition to the injury report with that wrist injury. So I would say probably like 75% chance right now that LaMelo's not going to play.
Okay. Yeah, that is a little tricky. By the way, the line is 8.5. I have it at 2.5. Makes me kind of feel like LaMelo Ball is not going to play today, because if anybody's going to impact the line on this team, he's the only one that's going to do it. So
I was going to say that's another good indication that he's probably not playing. Is the Vegas line, or is the line right now?
That means that everything on this slate changes. Half of the ownership to the number 1 guy goes away and gets redistributed to Trae Young, to Damian Lillard, to the Boston dudes, Cleveland Clippers, Giannis even will probably get a little bit more. If he comes out, this is going to change everything we're talking about, including the Charlotte Hornets. So, yeah, if he's in, do you like him? I assume you do.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, if LaMelo plays, I think he's one of the best spend ups on the slate right now. With Bridges off the court this year, 1.52 fantasy point per minute player. Obviously gets a bump in usage, and he do a bit more ball handling, and it's a great matchup. So if he does surprisingly play, yeah, I really like LaMelo. I would say, looking at the other spend ups on the slate, be like him and Giannis would be my 2 favorite spend ups. So yeah, if he's in, I really like him. But again, right now I'm leaning that he will not play.
Okay, let's try to work our way through this both ways if we can.
Okay.
Because obviously, LaMelo in and LaMelo out are 2 completely different setups for Charlotte.
For sure.
Because LaMelo in is still creating 30% ownership to Daquan Jeffries, 30% ownership to Nick Smith, 30% ownership to Wendell Moore, 22% ownership to Yusuf Nurkic, who we have projected for 14.8 minutes. And he's 33% optimal, more than his current ownership. Not to mention, it's still 10% to Mark Williams, 10% to Josh Green. If LaMelo's playing, who are the guys that you are looking at the most?
Well, it would depend on the starting lineup there with Bridges out. I think we're expecting it to be Nick Smith, and they would go LaMelo, Nick Smith, Josh Green, Mark Williams, and Daquan Jeffries. Is that the starting lineup that you would expect if LaMelo plays?
I don't know. And I know that's not going to be a really helpful answer right now. So I am of the impression that our current projected starting lineup is LaMelo Ball, Daquan Jeffries, Josh Green, Moussa Diabate, and Mark Williams. But that is not supported by the 12 minutes that we have to Moussa Diabate at this moment.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a little curious about that right now. If LaMelo's in, I'm assuming it's Ball, Jeffries, Green, Williams, and Diabate. If LaMelo is out, then I think Nick Smith is probably going to be starting in this scenario. Maybe Seth Curry, but I doubt that at this point. So like it is a little tricky, but the fifth starter, I mean, just like the Miles Bridges replacement right now is a huge answer, and we don't have that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm not confident in the fifth starter or the starter in place of LaMelo, but I assume the starter in place of LaMelo is Nick Smith.
Okay, I think it could be honestly Damian Bowell. Like they called him up. Like he could honestly start too. We've seen that, like him get called up and just start games because he's honestly played pretty well one given minute. So I actually think there's a chance like a flat min price Bowell could get the start too.
I didn't even that's a real problem if it happens, because if he's the starter and you give him anything north of 24 minutes, even as a pretty shitty guy in terms of fantasy points, like 18 fantasy point projection is still 6x on a 4-legger or on a 4-game.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's going to be one of the best value plays of the day. Actually, what's the highest value play we have on the day right now? In our projections right now, Yusuf Nurkic at 6x's salary is the number one play. If Damian Bowell happens to start, he would then become the best point per minute guy that we have right now. He'll be massively owned. Massively owned.
Yeah. I think he would be the highest owned play of the slate probably if he starts.
What else stands out here? Like, do you want 30% owned Wendell Moore at 3,100? Because he looks okay if LaMelo's in, and they're just running out of places to give minutes if he's out. I think we're going to end up on a lot of Charlotte if we lose LaMelo.
Yeah, I'm going to have some interest in Wendell Moore. We haven't seen him a ton so far on the Hornets. Not a great point per minute player, but at 3,100, small forward, power forward eligibility, I think you for sure have to consider him. What you mentioned too, like I think you can get some Diabate at the 4 today, just because of how shorthanded the Hornets are. I think that's definitely in the range of outcomes. We've seen Charlotte play the three-headed center rotation with Mark Williams, Nurkic, and Diabate. But yeah, like I would not be shocked if you do see a little bit of a Diabate at the 4. So if that's the case, like he could be in consideration there at 3,200. We know Nurkic is a good point per minute player. He's 3,300. If you do get some Diabate at the 4, maybe that's a slight increase in minutes for Nurkic. So like he is already in play and would look a little bit better there too. So I think there's like the most variance for sure right now in Charlotte and like what could happen. Like there's a lot of range outcomes right now for what could happen with the Hornets with different variations of the lineups.
Yeah, because if I'm right and my expectation of Moussa Diabate starting at the 4 happens here, and if LaMelo's out, I think it happens even more. Like I think he's the real problem and is going to be 50% owned. I had him as the number one guy of the day this morning. I'm anticipating him getting a lot more minutes. I'm curious to see where we end up over the next hour and a half. Plenty of time to move this stuff around. Still have to get news and everything. We'll get the LaMelo news probably on live before lock. So we'll have all of these updates. But my expectation if Moussa Diabate starts is that he is either the most popular or one of the 3 most popular guys, depending on the rest of this news. He's a fantasy point per minute guy. And if he starts and there's no LaMelo, like he might play, if he plays 24 minutes, he is now the best value play today. This is a crazy Charlotte team.
Yep, for sure.
One guy I don't want to play, but I don't think we have much of a choice, is Daquan Jeffries. Like the minutes are there. He's 4K, he's small forward, power forward eligible. LaMelo in, LaMelo out. I don't think it matters all that much. He's just going to be out there. He is 0.67 fantasy points per minute. Like this guy is not very good at DFS scoring, but at 4K, he's in a quarter of lineups, and I think it's reasonable.
Yeah, like he's one of those guys right now that I'm kind of just like indifferent on. I don't think he has like a massive ceiling, but playing pretty consistent minutes. As you mentioned, not a great point per minute player, but relatively cheap. Nick Smith, as we mentioned, like he's someone that I think does have a ceiling here, especially if LaMelo gets rolled out. He's someone that like he will chuck when he's on the court. We've seen some ceiling games from Nick Smith Jr. I don't think he's a great real life player, but like he's not afraid to shoot when he's out there. So like he's one of those guys that I think would take on a lot of usage here if LaMelo gets rolled out. And I think like if you're looking at like the Hornets value plays if LaMelo gets rolled out, I think Nick Smith Jr. Probably has like the highest ceiling of all of them.
Probably. Is it Damian Bow though?
Yeah, it could be Damian Bow. I mean, yeah, I would say it's one of those two because like Bow would take on a lot more usage in ball handling too. So I would say it's one of those two that I think have like the really high ceiling of the value plays. Because like I don't really see a massive ceiling for, well, obviously not for Josh Green. I don't see it for like Wendell Moore or Daquan Jeffries. Nurkic just depends on the minutes, right? Like he's a good point per minute player. Just depends on the minutes for him. But yeah, I think those two would probably have the highest ceiling of the value options.
Oh yeah, this is so gross. Do you think you'll roster Nurkic? 20% owned, backup center at best. Do you want to see Diabate start to like Nurkic more?
Yeah, so that's a good point. Like if they go that big lineup and Diabate starts, I would have a lot more confidence in the Mets for Nurkic. Because if Diabate doesn't start, not as confident in him playing a lot at the 4. If he does start at the 4, then that just makes me feel more secure about the minutes for Nurkic. So yeah, the starting lineup's going to matter, and also obviously the status of LaMelo.
Yeah, this is going to be a pretty big one for the old Live Before Lock crew because this is just, the LaMelo news changes everything, and the starting lineup for the Hornets changes everything. And most of these guys are made up, non-real NBA players, and figuring out what these guys are going to do is going to be a complicated journey. But this is the game. Reminder, 54% of all of the ownership on today's slate exists in this game. And that number might go up if LaMelo Ball is out.
Mm-hmm. Someone asked about KJ Simpson. He's still with the G League, so he's not available. Are you interested in like Seth Curry or Marcus Garrett, those guys at all? They're not getting much ownership, but do you have any interest in those two?
I feel like I should if LaMelo is out. They don't look good. They don't project well. If one of them starts, that could change up the equation here because we have Garrett in for 21 and a half minutes. We have Seth Curry in for 16. We're going to need to send 32 minutes somewhere. I mean, in theory, they could all go to Damian Bow and it just goes away like that. But that seems like a tough sell for me unless you get one of them starting. I'm really surprised they didn't call up Salon today.
I know. I'm surprised they didn't call up a couple more of these guys. But
like Salon's a real contract guy. This is not like a two-way where you got to save his days. Like he's just with their G League team, and they were just like, "Nah, man, we're good."
Right.
Because I was like, "Oh, Miles Bridges is out. They're just gonna call up Salon and start him and go about their business." Nope. They were like, "Nah, we're square. Doesn't matter." So yeah, a lot of question marks left for Charlotte. You're gonna want to watch Live Before Lock because they're going to have the answers for you guys. Well, this game's slightly different than the previous game. Brooklyn and Boston. Brooklyn, 14-point dogs in Boston, 213 total. This total is 20 points lower than the game we just talked about. The pace is 7 possessions slower than the game we just talked about. 8% total ownership to Brooklyn and Boston combined. That's like the Atlanta-Charlotte game is 7 times more owned than what we're talking about here. The highest owned guy in this game is 13% to Drew Holiday. Al Horford's at 10. Everybody else in the game is single digits. So we need to figure out if this is a relevant pivot for what we need to do today. We're going to start it off on the Brooklyn side. Obviously, no Cam Thomas. He's done for the rest of the year. Noah Clowney is probable. But this is basically just the same rotation we've been getting out of Brooklyn. 6% ownership to D'Angelo Russell is the most owned Brooklyn net on DraftKings. 5% to Keon Johnson on FanDuel is the most owned guy on that side. The highest rank we have coming out of the Boom Bust tool is 39th to D'Angelo Russell. What's the path here? Because no one has higher than a 5% optimal. Can you justify the Brooklyn Nets?
Yeah, so right now this is definitely my least favorite team to target on the slate. I'm expecting a 10-man rotation here for Brooklyn. And the issue is like some of these guys were priced up from that last game when they were pretty shorthanded and they had 9 available players. And now you get a matchup against Boston too. So there's really not much here for Brooklyn that I like at all. I think if I had to click someone, it would be D'Angelo Russell, 5,900. Absolutely hate rostering this guy. Like he's super up and down, super inconsistent, but the minutes have been decent for him, 29, 29, 25, and 27 over the last 4 games. Since returning from All-Star break with Cam Thomas off the court, it's a small sample size, but 1.15 fantasy point per minute player. So I think right now my plan is to just completely avoid Brooklyn, but I think if I had to click someone, it would be D'Lo. And I guess he's getting the most ownership currently at 5%.
Yeah, I think I'm with you there on Russell. I would have liked a couple $100 cheaper of a price tag on Day'Ron Sharp to roll the dice on a day like today, but that seems like a tough. Oh, he's actually ranked ahead of Russell. He's 33rd. My apologies, guys. I undersold Day'Ron Sharp here. Yeah, I mean, we only have 5 dudes on this team that have an optimal rate that isn't 0. That's how bad it looks here for Brooklyn. But the problem for me is just they win this game outright 20% of the time, something like that. I feel like if they win the game, something has to be a little bit more interesting. They've got a 90% aggregate boom, which implies that one dude is going to hit their target score today. I don't know how to thread that needle. The minutes for Zaire Williams have been interesting lately. Keon Johnson looks a little bit better because there's no Cam Thomas, but he's 6,100 and a not good per minute guy. Cam Johnson plays a ton. I feel like he has the same game every day. Russell's obviously the most volatile guy, but it feels like I never get his minutes right. I'm just at a loss for this Brooklyn team today. This is such a unique slate. I feel like you never see situations where 4 teams are just wildly unowned compared to the other 4. And I feel like we should be able to squeeze something out of that, but I just don't see it. I can't even fake it or figure out what it would be. It just doesn't exist.
I know. I wish Trendon Watford was a little bit cheaper. If he was in the low 4K range, I think he would be someone I would have some interest in. He's 4,800 though. He's kind of been playing the backup point guard. As weird as that sounds, he is basically right behind D'Lo over the last 5 games of potential assists, averaging 7.5 potential assists per game. But with a 10-man rotation, I don't really see him playing more than 20, 22 minutes. He played 27 last game, but again, that was with a much more shorthanded roster. So it's just the fact that they have a lot of guys available and the way that Brooklyn's been running the rotation, plus the fact that these guys are priced up. It just, I wish I could make an argument for more, but I really can't.
I can't either. And the problem is, I don't think it's much better on the Boston side, but in theory, it could be. Jaylen Brown is already out. Jason Tatum is questionable. I mean, he could sit. He's unowned. 5% to Jason Tatum right now. Pretty much everybody's unowned. 13% to Drew, 10 to Al Horford, 9 to Derek White, 5 to Tingus Pingus, 5 to Peyton Pritchard. Does anybody stand out to you for Boston? Because I kind of like Drew Holiday.
Okay, yeah. So assuming Tatum plays, I would say, probably $5,200 Drew would be my preferred option right now, getting a little over 10% ownership. Minutes for him have been pretty good of late. 30 plus minutes in each of the last 5 games, 35, 32, 35, 35, 38. He gets a little bit of assist bump too with Jaylen Brown off the court. $5,200 Drew, I think, is a decent option. I guess my take on Tatum right now. So I want to see this, the next injury report we should be getting in the next minute or two. But Boston has 3 G League guys questionable. JD Davison, Miles Norris, and Drew Peterson. So I think if we get
they're all available. Report, they're all available.
Yeah, okay.
Every one of them.
Okay. So that kind of leads me to believe that Tatum is going to get rolled out then.
Oof. Okay. Let's do this. Anything you want to prioritize if Jason Tatum plays?
No priorities. I think that Drew is playable. I think Horford, Derek White are playable. I think Tatum is viable as a contrarian option. I don't love the price point. I prefer other spend ups. I think you can make an argument for any of the main guys. The minutes actually on Porzingis were a lot higher than I thought in his first game. He played 32 minutes, but definitely no priorities if Tatum plays.
what are your priorities if he doesn't? Or do you not have them because they just activated JD Davison, Miles Norris, and Drew Peterson? None of those names sound like NBA players.
Yeah, they sound like fake players. So I would have a lot more interest in Boston if Tatum gets ruled out. So let me bring up. Hold on. That's not working for.
Like obviously, Derek White gets a bump, Drew gets a bump, Horford gets a bump, Porzingis gets a bump. Like all those guys incrementally look better. Pritchard, Hauser, whatever. But like, where do we land?
Yeah. So again, all those guys look better. Again, White, Drew Holiday get a nice assist bump, usage bump for Derek White. You're gonna get more minutes for Peyton Pritchard. I think they would go if Tatum gets rolled out. I think they'd go the starting lineup of Derek White, Sam Hauser, or Drew Holiday, Derek White, Sam Hauser, Horford, and Porzingis. And then you would get more run for Peyton Pritchard, who at 5,800 would be firmly in play. Cornette at 4,200, I think would be viable. He'd play some backup center minutes. And then Hauser 4,100 would definitely be in play, assuming he starts. So yeah, this team in general would look a lot better. And a team that I would, if Tatum gets rolled out, I'll probably try to get to one of these main guys.
I don't think there's anything that could happen today that makes Sam Hauser look good.
You don't think you'd get to him even if Tatum gets rolled out and he starts?
How many minutes does he average in his starts?
I want to say, like, just on the top of my head, probably like mid-20s.
Yeah. So he started 14 games this year. He's averaged 29 minutes. If you give him 29 minutes, we have him in at 0.68 fantasy points per minute. That's 19.72 fantasy points at 4,100, 4.8x salary. I just like, that's not going to look better than anything on Atlanta or Charlotte. And that says nothing for Milwaukee and Golden State either.
Yeah, he's definitely, he wouldn't be someone that, I don't think he would be like someone I'd be going out of my way to play, but I do think he'd be like in consideration.
Sure. I mean, look, if every starter is clickable on a 4-game slate, but I would expect his underlying metrics to still look bad. I think the funnel would be Pritchard to a degree, Derek White, massive jump in all rates with those dudes off the floor. And then, I mean, Drew will look better than he already does. Al Horford will probably look a little bit better than he already does. I don't think it's going to unlock like Cornette or anything for me, and I'm just not a big Sam Hauser guy. I really think my focus would be even more of Drew Holiday.
Yeah, I think the guards like Drew, Pritchard, White would probably be the first guys I would look to. I do think Porzingis would be in play in that scenario, just because like he played 32 minutes in his first game. Like in a competitive game, I would not be shocked if he plays similar, maybe even a little bit more. So. Yeah. He would be in play too, but I think that the first guys to look to, I think I would agree, like Drew, Derek White, and then some Peyton Pritchard.
All right, yeah, we're on the same page there. It's just a weird spot. Like Brooklyn's defense isn't absolute ass level defense.
Mm-hmm.
They've got enough relevant people here that it's still fine. The pace of this game is disgusting. The implied total for Boston and Brooklyn is not all that great. I mean, Brooklyn's implied total today is sub 100. You don't see that all that often in these days. So this is a game that's not getting a lot of ownership. If Tatum ends up out, it'll grab a little bit more, but I am hoping that nothing is good here and that we can get to a dub in a different direction.
Also, it feels like,
oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying, it feels like Brooklyn, like they're like a good bad team, if that makes sense. Like they seem to always keep games competitive, even though they're like,
I think they're really well coached.
Yeah.
So shout out to Brooklyn. Shout out to us. You guys want the portfolio EV tool at Odds Shopper? You want to corner the market on the best possible bets, take a market-based approach to beating the books, get down hundreds of bets a day, potentially. We saw Greg do like 400 last Saturday. It's free. And you could do it by looking at this. 68% off your first month of the portfolio EV tool. It is normally $100. It is $32 for the month. 1 percentage point off the price for every team in the NCAA tournament. This deal ends tomorrow, 11:59. And I'm explaining that for everyone I work with other than Ben Raza. He is the only one that understands how time works. The rest of these guys have been telling you the wrong info. They've all been telling you it ends today. That is untrue. You get all of tomorrow, but you should do it today. Use it. Start getting those bets in right now. Why would you want to take any additional time? whether it's pick'em sites or sports books. You get expected value, expected win rates. We have odds boost calculators. We have parlay builders. You could do all of the same card building for the pick'em sites, live odds screens, a wealth of advanced data. If you want to dig into any sort of like trend analysis, if that's your cup of tea, we have that for you if you want it. This is the way to do it. This is the way to build a bankroll, and you can get in for $32, 68% off your first month. Promo code DANCE, link in the description. Now we got another good game to talk about. It's a very distinct slate. 54% ownership to Atlanta and Charlotte, 8 to Brooklyn and Boston, 30 more to Milwaukee and Golden State. 85% of the ownership is in 2 of these games. The Milwaukee Bucks are 3-point favorites in Golden State, 227 total. Milwaukee has a probable tag on Giannis, a probable tag on Dame, probable tag on Gary Trent. Jericho Sims is going to be out for the next couple of weeks. Obviously, Bobby Portis is still suspended. Giannis Antetokounmpo, 45% owned, 11,500. And if LaMelo Ball ends up out, that ownership number on Giannis is going to go up considerably. I already think he's the best guy to get to. We have infinite salary. He's projected for like 10 more fantasy points than anybody else. Give me every single bit of Giannis. I don't want to get away at all.
Yep, complete agreement there. Like raw points are going to matter on a small slate. And we already have some decent value. I think we'll get some more value opening up. 11.5K is a reasonable price point there for Giannis. I think he's going to play around 35 minutes here in a competitive game. So yeah, Giannis looks great. I think right now, looking at his current ownership, I would want to get over that 45%.
Yeah, every bit of him looks great, and that number is going to skyrocket if we lose LaMelo. Remember, LaMelo right now is owned more than Giannis, and if he goes away, you got to get 50% of a 9+K guy redistributed somewhere. It's going to be going to a bit of Giannis, and it's probably going to go to a bit of Damian Lillard. 8,500 point guard only. He's 20% owned right now, 15% optimal. That number is going to climb if LaMelo's gone, because that's just one other point guard spot that can't get filled by him. What do you want to do with Dame?
Right. I'm kind of indifferent on Dame, 8,500. Like, I'm not going to go out of my way to play him, but if he lands in a lineup, that's totally fine. Obviously, he does have a pretty high ceiling. Giannis right now, a little over 2x the ownership. So if Giannis, something happens, gets in foul trouble or something weird, like Dame would obviously benefit. So yeah, like if you land on Dame, that's fine. Don't really have any super strong takes on him and his current ownership.
Yeah, he's just like a good guy to have probably 25% of by the time we get to lock. So I'm cool there. What about the rest of these guys? Because this is where it starts to get a little dicey, and I don't know how you separate it. Around 10% ownership to Brook Lopez, around 10% to Taurean Prince, 15 for Kuz, 15 for Gary Trent, 15 for KPJ. Do you like one of those guys more than the others?
I think KPJ of that group, he's 3,800. We've been seeing a little bit more overlap with him and Damian Lillard of late. So his minutes have been a bit more secure. 17, 17, 19, and 19 minutes over the last 4 games. Since coming to Milwaukee, he's a 1.28 fantasy point per minute player. So solid point per minute.
I'm going to cut you off for a second quickly, because I know you'll want to hear this information. Why is this not popping up now? The total in Atlanta, Charlotte, has been dropping precipitously. It's down 5 points from its opener. I think that's leading us to a little bit more information that LaMelo Ball is not going to be playing here today. Didn't want to cut you off, but somebody mentioned it in chat, and I just looked at it. So, there's going to be less points when LaMelo Ball is not out there. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, very
anyway,
good point.
Continue.
So, so KPJ, again, pretty good point per minute player. Again, been overlapping a little bit more here with Dame. And what I'm curious about is, without Jericho Sims, does Milwaukee just go like small and they play like Giannis as like a backup 5? Or are they going to like dust off like one of these, like, I don't know, Tyler Smith or Pete Nance, and maybe play them a little bit? If they go small ball, then I'm like more confident in the minutes for guys like, Gary Trent and KPJ. Kuzma, they're going to feel a little bit better. But again, of those options, like KPJ is like the best point per minute. So like if he pushes for 20 plus minutes in this spot, then yeah, I think he's going to be like a really solid value option. So yeah, of that group, I think it's KPJ. But I'm curious, what do you think they're going to do without Jericho Sims? Do you think they're just going to play small behind Brook Lopez?
For the most part, yes. I think we'll probably see like Tyler Smith get a rotation, see how it works. If it doesn't go terrible, then maybe he gets that second one in the second half. Because I don't think they want to put a ton of like 5 Giannis miles on right now, but they're going to have to for at least a little bit, depending on matchups. That's for sure. But for right now, I'm going to assume Tyler Smith gets a rotation with the potential to get another one.
Okay. What are your thoughts on like these secondary bucks? I guess, do you have like a preferred option?
I mean, preferred is maybe not the terminology I'm looking for. Like, I think KPJ is the most interesting one because he's the only one that's any good on a per minute basis. But he's also KPJ. Like, he can play 15 minutes because nobody cares and it'll just not matter at all. And we have a ton of guys that look like him today. Like, it'll be an interesting conversation about, like, is KPJ a pivot to Damian Bow if he starts type stuff? So I think KPJ is just like the easiest one to want to get to. And then, like, I don't know, probably Gary Trent is the one I would be most interested in. You get that guard forward MPE, 3,700, the potential to play a couple extra minutes if they do run it small and start bumping everybody to the right. You know, you can free those minutes up by playing more of Taurean Prince at the 3, more of Kuzma at the 4, more of Giannis at the 5. I think Gary Trent becomes the guy that benefits the most there. So I think I would say that Trent is my preferred non-good Milwaukee player guy.
Okay. That's a fair take.
Yeah. But I don't want to, like, I'm not planting a flag on Gary Trent here. It's just, I'm choosing one because I was prompted to.
Right. And then, yeah, like for me, like I'm pretty indifferent on Kuzma and Brook Lopez. Kuzma has been struggling a bit of late, but the price has come down. He should still see over 30 minutes if this game does stay competitive. Brook Lopez maybe picks up a couple extra minutes without Jericho Sims. Obviously, he's not a great point per minute player, but reasonable ownership, fine filler option. So, not really much else for me to add. I don't think I'm going to get into Taurean Prince at 4,100. I know he's getting about 10% ownership, but I don't know if I see the ceiling on him. Probably not going to get to AJ Green either, because again, I think we'll get the LaMelo out confirmation here pretty soon.
Well, then let's go to Golden State. We got the news we were looking for earlier today. Steph Curry is not going to be playing in this one. I actually thought we were going to lose somebody else based on where the line was, but that didn't happen. We have maybe it'll happen. We have a Q tag on Brandon Pajemski, who's been out for a couple games. Quentin Post is questionable with a right ankle impingement. Gary Payton is available. We are getting some love into Golden State. About 25% ownership to Jimmy Butler, about 25% ownership to Draymond Green, and about 25% ownership to Jonathan Kuminga. Those 3 guys are the ones getting the ownership. Everybody else is sub 10%. These guys are a bit more owned on FanDuel. Like Moses Moody is 25% owned on FanDuel. He's 7 on DraftKings. Brandon Pajemski is 40% owned on FanDuel, 7 on DraftKings. So very different dynamic between the two sites today. Obviously, the Q tags are going to matter depending on how deep we're going to be going to Golden State. But who is your preferred warrior for today?
Yeah, so for me, I think it's Jimmy Butler. I'm a little bit surprised he's not getting more ownership right now. A little less than 30% right now for Butler. So with Steph Curry off the court this year, he's a 1.25 fantasy point per minute player. The potential assists have been very solid for Jimmy Butler of late as well. Leading the team potential assists, averaging about 60 passes made and 15 potential assists over the last 5 games. So expecting a little bit more ball handling here for Jimmy Butler without Steph Curry. I think like of the main Warriors, I think he's the guy with the high ceiling. We've seen he's been a little bit up and down, but I think with Steph off the court, obviously you're just going to expect more usage here for Jimmy Butler. So looking at everyone for the Warriors, I think it's him, and I'm a little bit surprised he's not getting more ownership.
Yeah, I thought he was going to pop a little bit more than this. I'm certainly intrigued by him just because feels like he's going to take this upon himself and care. And they don't have too many other guys that have that sort of in them. It's basically just him and Kuminga, if we're being honest. 202 minutes so far for Jimmy Butler with Steph Curry off the floor. 26% usage rate, 1.25 fantasy points per minute. We have him in for 1.15 right now, which I think is pretty reasonable, but he's been pretty damn good from a fantasy perspective with Steph off. So I like the idea of getting to a bit more Butler potentially. How do you want to handle Jonathan Kuminga at 5,500? Because we have him 34% optimal with a 24% ownership. We grade him out as the best DraftKings play from the Warriors. Do you see it that way?
Yeah, so I like the minutes increase for Kuminga. So in his first game back, they're pretty conservative. First couple games back, they're pretty conservative, right? They played him 20 minutes.
Yeah.
They're against Sacramento, 20 minutes against New York. Played 28 against Denver. So that's really good to see. If he can play 28 minutes here without Steph, then yeah, I think he would be probably my favorite Warrior. Now the issue is it's a back-to-back. Do they pull back a little bit since again he's still returning from that ankle injury? But yeah, I like the ceiling here on Kuminga. And again, I like the fact that he saw that nice minutes bump last game.
Yeah, my only concern was just like, do they take it easy on him in the back-to-back or not?
Mm-hmm.
And that was the piece that kind of scared me a little bit. Are you expecting Podziemski to play?
So I think so. And I don't know what I assume he would probably be limited if he's been out for a couple weeks. So Steve Kerr said prior to Saturday's game that Podziemski's progressing well. He'll be out Monday, the potential of returning Tuesday. So yeah, I don't have like a super strong lean right now on him. And I would want to keep an eye on the news too, because like if he gets ruled in, he starts and there's no limit, then yeah, I'm gonna have a lot of interest in Podziemski because I think like he could definitely play 30 plus minutes here without Steph.
Same sort of situation for Quentin Post. I don't know if you have a lean on Quentin Post. That's a pretty tough lean to grab. But if he's out, like, are we going to be looking at Kevon Looney today?
Maybe. I think they would probably, if Post gets ruled out, I think they would probably just start Draymond at the 5. And then maybe just get more run for guys like, Gary Payton, the minutes have already been solid, but more run for him, a little more run for like Buddy Hield, a little more run for like Moses Moody. So yeah, I think if Post gets ruled out, they would probably start Draymond. But I guess it's in the range of outcomes that they could start Looney here.
I mean, this is a Giannis matchup. This is the kind of matchup you might put Looney out there for every minute until he fouls out. Like,
yeah,
he's kind of sneaky to me today. Obviously, if Post is out, I don't think he's going to be sneaky any longer, but this could be a spot where you just get a couple extra Kevon Looney minutes. Has he gotten any sort of bump lately?
Not really. Like the minutes have been, he's usually in the low teens, like last 5 games, 15, 6, 17, 20, 11 minutes. But it is like kind of matchup specific for Looney. Like there are certain matchups where he will get extended. Like, for example, against the Kings, against Sabonis, there's a lot of times where they'll extend Looney. So yeah, like in a spot on the opposite side against, Milwaukee with Giannis and Lopez, like, yeah, I could see him getting extended here. I think it's definitely possible.
Yeah. Now, if Post is in, that's going to be difficult to pull off, but this could be a spot where he grabs a couple extra minutes just because of the Giannis factor here. What about the rest of these guys? Any Moody, any Hield? Gary Payton was looking a little bit more interesting earlier today. Not as much so now, but that could change if Podziemski's out. I think Gary Payton's minutes are going to go up in these projections. He's a pretty solid per minute guy, great price, great positionality. I think if we lose Podziemski, Gary Payton goes from a guy that no one's paying attention to like a 25% owned dude.
Yeah. I think like some of these value options are going to depend on Podziemski because if he gets rolled out, obviously I'm going to have a lot more interest in like the Gary Paytons, the Buddy Hields, the Moses Moody's. Like Buddy Hield is a guy that has a relatively wide range of outcomes, very up and down, but like he's a guy that does have a ceiling with Steph Curry off the court this year, 23.3% usage rate. We've seen some pop-off games. We've also seen the floor games from him too. Like if you just look at the box score over the last 4 games, 40 fancy points, 32 fancy points, 7 fancy points, 3 fancy points. That's Buddy Hield in a nutshell, right? If he's making his shots, ceiling's there. If not, we know he has a very low floor.
Anything else you want to touch on here for Golden State?
No, I think we covered that pretty well. Obviously, keep an eye on those injuries. I think Podziemski one is the big one. And then, yeah, if Post gets rolled out, the starting lineup's going to be important there, too. Because like if Draymond starts at the 5, he already looks good, but I think he would look a little bit better if he starts at the 5.
I agree. So final game, everybody, hit that like button if you're here. We got about 1,700 people in the door. It will help the Live Before Lock crew out tremendously if we could run that like number up. This last game is as shitty as the second game. Brooklyn and Boston, 8% aggregate ownership. Cleveland and the Clippers, 8% aggregate ownership. There's just nothing coming in here. Only Kawhi Leonard is in double digits of ownership on either site. For either team on DraftKings. There's a bunch more ownership coming in on the FanDuel side. Also, there's more ownership on FanDuel. There's an extra roster spot. Either way. Cleveland is a little interesting. Evan Mobley's questionable. That honestly might not do anything, but we got to pay attention to it. 9% ownership to Donovan Mitchell is the most of anybody on Cleveland. He ranks 27th in our boom bust tool. How do you want to handle this? Because this is a slow matchup. It's two of the best defenses in the league. Pace down, massive pace down spot for Cleveland. What do you want to get to for the Cavs?
Yeah, so I think if Mobley's in, there's really not much here. Again, pace down matchup, expecting a 10-man rotation. Some of these guys were priced up from when Mobley missed last game. So there really wouldn't be much at all if Mobley's in. Even if Mobley's out, I honestly still don't know if I would get to a ton. I think you would probably get DeAndre Hunter in the starting lineup if Mobley sits. Hunter started last game, played 29 minutes. So like he would probably pick up a start. You still saw 10 guys play. You saw Tristan Thompson get dusted off. Jared Allen does get a bump in rebound percentage with Mobley off the court. Slight minutes bump too, but again, his price came up. So either way, I still might not get to much, but especially if Mobley's in, this is definitely one of the least appealing teams in the slate.
Yeah, like this is one of those situations I think is a little bit different than at least the Brooklyn side and to a degree the Boston side. I don't mind having any ownership looped into Mitchell, Mobley, Garland, or Allen on this slate. Like if I just got a bunch of one of those dudes or two of those dudes, I'm cool with it. Maybe I could swap it at 7:30. Maybe I could swap it at 10. Maybe I'm just cool with having the best guys from Cleveland in this spot. I like this one a little bit more just because of how competitive this should be. Like we should get 32 minutes out of Donovan Mitchell. And on a 4-game slate, that's a 20% chance of scoring 54 fantasy points. Like I get why they're not getting that much ownership because on a point per dollar basis, they're not going to look that great. They're not going to be efficient plays. I think Cleveland's the team that I want to make my ownership pivots to.
Okay. Yeah. Like I think these guys are fine guys to kind of mix in, obviously any of the main Cavs, but yeah, as you mentioned, tough spot. Price points are not amazing, but would I be surprised if like one of these guys has a big game? No, not at all.
But if Mobley is out, do you think there's someone you're going to get to, or is this just sort of like an incremental bump and nobody looks amazing?
I don't know if I think it would just be an incremental bump. Like you get a bit of a usage bump there for Garland and Mitchell. Garland 30% usage with Mobley off the court. Mitchell 33% usage. Rebounding numbers again go up a bit there for Jared Allen. He's averaging 18.8 rebounds per 100 possessions. So all three of those guys would look a little bit better. Hunter would probably move in the starting lineup and I think would be playable at 5,400. But yeah, I don't think there'd be like one specific guy that I would get to if Mobley gets sold out.
Okay. Well, let's close this out then with the LA Clippers. Nobody on their injury report that matters. This is just full strength Clippers. We haven't really seen that in a while. And I think that makes this a little weird. I don't know what they're going to do here because they've just kind of had somebody out constantly. Like Norm Powell was out for so long. Are they going to run a 9-man rotation, a 10-man rotation? Is somebody going to get cut? Is everybody going to lose minutes except for Harden, Leonard, and Zoo? I don't know. We got 15% ownership coming into Kawhi. He's 19% optimal. Clearly looks like the best Clipper, at least in our data. And then everybody else is sub 10% owned and not all that interesting. So how are you handling the Clippers?
Yeah, so I kind of think they'll play 10 guys. That's my lean right now. So like that's the issue is I don't know. I think if I had to play someone, it would be Kawhi, but expecting a relatively deep rotation here for the Clippers. Kawhi, again, around 20%, he's 8,200. We've been talking about how the Mets have been very secure for him of late. You do have Norm Powell back. I don't know how many minutes Norm Powell can play. He only played 23 minutes in his first game back. I would expect a little bit more for Powell. And obviously he's a guy that's a, relatively high usage player. So it's going to, hurt guys like Kawhi and Harden a little bit. I think it's really hard to get to like the value options for the Clippers because again, I think they're going to run a pretty deep rotation here. So like, don't think I can get to like Ben Simmons, Bogdanovich is definitely overpriced. So I think if you get to, again, Kawhi's reasonable option, if you land on like Harden or Zubats as a contrarian play, like sure. But I think it's really hard to make an argument for anyone else on the Clippers.
Yeah, I don't know what the minutes are going to look like. We had Nick Batum playing 30 earlier in this week. Mm-hmm. He played 15 last time out, and I think that's going to be what he's going back to in these spots. are they going to cut coffee? Are they going to like go to 9 and shrink it and sit somebody different every day? Because like Ben Simmons is going to be sitting half the games. You could certainly rest Batum. Everybody else could probably grab a day from time to time. But today, if they're going to run 10, I don't know how you could look at anybody other than Harden, Leonard, and Zubats. And James Harden's 10,300. Even if we lose LaMelo Ball and Jason Tatum, I don't know how much you could get to him in this spot against Cleveland.
Right.
It doesn't look good.
Because and we have Giannis on the slate. If Tatum gets rolled out, we're gonna have some good plays in the mid range there for Boston. So there's even if some news breaks away, I still don't know if I get to a ton of Harden.
No, I don't think I will either. It's mostly, to me, it's mostly Kawhi and nobody else. Zoo's just expensive at 8,400. I don't have a problem getting to him, but that's a really big price tag for him right now, especially with Norm Powell back. That's just less potential touches. This is a hell of a slate, dude. It is wild for 4 games. A lot of nonsense, 2 crazy games to get to. The first game of the night being half of the ownership of the day. I can't imagine who's going to be popping up as like the true dudes you needed to have 6 hours from now. Crazy. I love it all. DK, tell the people where to find you.
Yeah, you guys can find me over on Twitter, DK__DFS, doing DFS and prop content.
He's also doing the Lord's work by telling everybody who the just giant pieces of garbage are in the sports betting community. So if you want to make sure if you're following somebody and you want to know if they're trash, follow DK on Twitter, because if they're trash, he'll get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, I got a long list of guys, and we'll probably keep going after some too.
Well, I'm not going to touch on that long list of guys you have. I'm going to let that one pass. I'll let chat get you for that one. But for now, guys, it is time for Live Before Lock. Thank you guys for being here. This has been a fun breakdown. I like this slate a lot for the nonsense we have. Big time news coming in the next hour. We need the status of LaMelo Ball, and we need to figure out what is going on for the Charlotte Hornets. Greg and Eric are going to handle every single bit of that for you guys for Live Before Lock. So thank you guys very much for being here. Have some fun. Stay on this stream. Live Before Lock is coming up next.
What is going on? Why is this screen sharing not working? All right. Well, this was a hurdle I didn't foresee coming. This is bizarre. Not as bizarre as what happened last night, but
No, it is not. Sorry, I was laughing to myself there as I was on mute. But yeah, that was a thing that happened. I heard about all of it after the fact, but I want to hear a play-by-play of what exactly went down because you texted me. And if you just got these texts just willy-nilly out of the blue, you would be so confused. And that's what I was. I was just so confused what you were actually talking about. And then we're in Slack just being like, oh yeah, Hitler and some other things are occurring on the screen. And I just need to hear a play-by-play for the people over here in YouTube as well.
Yeah, so I'm also trying to figure out why my screen won't share right now. But the short version of the story is the playback stream got hacked last night. Yeah. And somebody was in there impersonating, pretending to be our friend Jordan Klein, ends up hacking the channel. And what do? They start putting it starts with heterosexual porn, and then it turns to not heterosexual porn, and gay porn is on screen. So and then also, of course, as happening, you get Nikola Jokic unexpectedly gets ruled out. So you got the kind people, our fans who are joining us over in playback. They are sitting there waiting to get Nikola Jokic updates, and that wasn't what they were getting on screen. Now, shout out to the people who stuck around, because there was 200 or so people that sat there patiently waiting for the situation to be resolved to get their Nikola Jokic news. So I hopped on late last night. I hung out for another 45 minutes after we got the channel back and everything got situated. And after all that was set, we were able to get the people the news on who to swap to for the Nikola Jokic situation. So apologies for last night. It was outside of our control. Hopefully it is something that doesn't end up happening again, but it's the internet. People are ridiculous people, and why anybody did that, who knows? But to make it up to you guys, here's what we're doing for today. We're running a little bit of a promo here. It's a make good for last night. Also something I thought would be a kind of funny way to address the situation. If you guys sign up for any NBA weekly package with the promo code HACKED, HACKED, link down below in the YouTube description box, 69% off any weekly package of your choosing. So if you guys want to get yourself a discount and get access to the tools, data projection, maybe you want to use our sims, use that promo code HACKED and get yourself 69% off any weekly package. And yeah, I am trying to figure out why it is that I can't share my screen right now. I'm going to give it another go right here.
I can share mine if you need me to as well. I'm happy to build out my lineups. Yep. Happy to build them out with the people live today.
Let's see if this works. There we go.
Hey, right. The sea is silent.
Yeah. I don't know what it is that is going on there. I think it is something to do as well with something goofy with playback, because I had to disable the screen share in playback and to make it work. So I'll just put on for now a pregame show for one of the NBA games. So post-lock, we aren't going to be doing a playback show for today. Not related to anything from yesterday, just because there's only 4 games on the slate and there's not going to be a lot of late breaking news or anything like that. There's a big gap in between games, but playback show, it'll be back and roaring tomorrow with basketball talk. Hopefully just basketball talk for tomorrow. Who knows? Whatever the hell else Josh wants to bring up. But 11 game slate for tomorrow. And what happened there?
That was me.
Okay. Don't Eric, no scare me like that.
I was just making sure that I could do it in case we're in a bind here. You know, you never know.
there was some very funny comments from people being like, "Oh, this is the lotion play tonight," which chat was absolutely going wild today. So once again, apologies, guys. Thank you very much for hanging out with us and coming back on and watching the show later at night as I talked about the Denver Nuggets and Nikola Jokic. It is what it is. Hopefully nothing that ends up happening again. Internet weird place. Like this video. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. And also, guys, one other thing that we should go over, in addition to the hacked promo that is going on, we've also got our 68% off promo going for Portfolio EV using that promo code DANCE. So if you guys do want to take advantage of Portfolio EV, we got the NCAA tournament starting on Thursday, and you get 68% off because there's 68 teams in the tournament if you sign up with that promo code DANCE.
I did that because I'm special.
It's when you flip the overlays, instead of turning it off, put the other overlay back on. You'll see.
I see what you're talking about.
Yeah. There we go. Almost there.
I'm an adult. I got it.
No.
I'm learning how to do this.
All right, cool.
I'm learning. I got it.
Anyway, 4-game NBA slate today. As per usual, Eric, I was not filibustering just solely to filibuster. We also had some news here, and I was waiting to see if we would get a projections update by the time we were done. It should be coming in a minute or two here. But a LaMelo Ball, he has been ruled out for tonight's game. We've also got Miles Bridges out. If you're going to rule out LaMelo, and they could have just ruled them both out at the same time, but they can't. That's what they do to get us on live before lock, is they give us inconvenient timing of news just as we start as per usual. But no LaMelo Ball, no Miles Bridges tonight either for the Charlotte Hornets. What is this going to do for the value on Charlotte?
Nick Smith Jr. is going to be infinity percent owned, so that's fun. Good start to the slate, having like an 80% owned piece of chalk that'll be showing up here. Nick Smith Jr., we'll see minutes into the 30s. We've seen 37, 32 recently in starts without LaMelo Ball, usually mid-20s, low 20s, but Nick Smith Jr. is going to be almost unavoidable yet again. And we've just had so many pieces of chalk. I mean, even yesterday, Thomas Bryant, I had a couple lineups with that other goober, Tony Bradley, but overall, he was like 0.03% owned, which was kind of funny to look at the end of it, where, you just flip one into the other, but still Thomas Bryant was unavoidable. And this is just like another piece of chalk that you look at on this slate. And we have Risa Shea. He's going to be popular. He should be. We have, all of these Atlanta pieces on the other side of it. I mean, this is just such a very, very popular first game. And then the most popular plate on the slate, because we have all of these chalk pieces, is Giannis. Like, Giannis is going to be even more popular than he was before because of how automatic it is to play a $4,700 piece in Nick Smith Jr. So we'll see how it all kind of comes out in the wash. I'm kind of contemplating what I want to do as far as like what lineup spots to even have open coming up later for the Brandon Pajemski kind of situation where, if he doesn't end up playing, he's still in our projections. Everybody else on Golden State is going to look even better now that Steph Curry's out. We have Quentin Post. If he ends up out, I can't imagine we get any minutes for Trace Jackson Davis. He seems like he's just been sent to the shadow realm. So Kevon Looney looks really good, I think, on the second half here of this back-to-back. There are some pieces that I've definitely got my eye out for, but Charlotte, Atlanta, pretty unavoidable on this slate.
And more news, Jason Tatum was just ruled out, even a 4-game slate. It has to be always something going on while we're here on live before lock. So probably going to get a bulk update that's going to cover both the Charlotte Hornets and the Celtics at the same time. So unless there was a projection update that was just pushed, it'll probably have to wait for the Boston Celtics to also be updated. And yeah, last night's slate was overall okay. All of I don't know if you realize this, Eric, literally every single viable, other than Andrew Nemhard, who we didn't really love for DraftKings purposes. He was much better over on FanDuel. He got ejected. I think every piece on the Pacers came through last night. Did that end up being the case, or am I forgetting somebody? I think everybody was.
Cat was one of the best plays on the slate once you removed Jokic. I mean, it happened after the fact, so it is what it is. But in post-contest sim ROI, because the center position was just wide open, you had Cat just sitting there at 2%. And of course, he puts up like 38.5 and just completely screws me as the nuke of the night. So that was sad because Jokic could have looked once Jokic was out, Cat looked unbelievable as an early play, and he just shit the bed. Would have been better off with Mitchell Robinson. What a time to be alive.
Yeah. Last night's slate, the piece I didn't have that was the reason why I lost to the rake overall and just had like kind of a neutral set of lineups. Not having, Quentin Grimes was it was unnecessary to have a top lineup last night. You got what was like 76 fantasy points out of Quentin Grimes, who it's going to be so hard to navigate some of those 76ers minutes as we go forward with what Philadelphia ends up doing. But I felt like everything else had a lot of Luka, had a lot of exposure to the Pacers, which was not crazy.
And I had a ton of Nuggets too. I just turned all the Denny into the Nuggets, like whether it was Aaron Gordon, Michael Porter Jr., those were all your best sim ROI guys at the end of the day. Once Jokic and Murray were out, it was one of those slates where you just needed one piece, Quentin Grimes, or you couldn't win. And then the other part was I had a pretty calculated stand on a center. Once you remove the top projected play at center, Cat was the next highest projected player. I would have done that a million times out of a million after the fact if I had known Jokic was going to be out. So just a bummer that it works out that way. But NBA, while it can still be the most projectable of these main sports that we cover, it can also be the most frustrating because reverse engineer all you want. An injury or an absolute nuke from Quentin Grimes can be the make it or break it part of the slate.
All right, let's go ahead and look at, we got a projections update here for the Charlotte Hornets as well as the ownership here. So we'll give a look at what the updates are looking for on Charlotte on both FanDuel and DraftKings. Starting with DK here and the fantasy point projections. We've got Mark Williams in for 43 fantasy points now. Nick Smith in for 30. We've got Bow in for 26. We got Daquan Jeffries for 24. Nurkic in for 21.5. We got Wendell Moore at 21. Josh Green at 20.4. And then as far as the ownership here, which is pretty substantial, we've got Damian Bow now is what I presume is the most popular play on the slate in our ownership projections. He's 96% projected owned, which much like Thomas Bryant, he's not actually going to be 96%. I think Thomas Bryant came in right around 50% owned last night. This is a smaller slate, but I don't know, maybe we get Bow at like 60% or something like that. But I very highly doubt that he's going to be anywhere near the 96% projected ownership. Nick Smith is 62% owned. Wendell Moore, 30% owned. Daquan Jeffries just under 30% owned. Then you got Mark Williams at 25% owned. What immediately stands out to you about this update on the Hornets?
Bow, wow, wow, yippee, yo, yippee, yay. I mean, my God, Damian Bow. 3K, 26. Again, this is just ridiculous that we're getting all of this value. The Mark Williams one is kind of wild to me. 8,100. He doesn't have anybody out there creating for him. You've got Diabate, Nurkic behind him. I mean, you could have Diabate starting alongside him here. Mark Williams hasn't seen minutes hit the 30-minute mark in the last 5 games. They've played competitive games in that span against Miami, against San Antonio. They got blown out against the Clippers. We know that one, but and that was the best one of all of them, ironically, in 25 minutes. But I get a little bit worried when I see very, very uber chalk on like a Mark Williams here, where I just know that there's no right tail. Like what he's going to get projected for in terms of minutes and fantasy projection, there's like no like right tail to it whatsoever. And he's going to be popular. And he doesn't necessarily need a right tail, I think, on this slate, but you do have other players, I think, in his range, whether it's Zubats, whether it's Porzingis now, depending on what those minutes can be. He played 32 against Brooklyn, his first game in 3.5 weeks from this illness that has just been the weirdest thing ever. But Kongwu is cheaper. Allen is cheaper with potential of Mobley sitting. There's just like interesting tournament plays, but I totally get why the ownership's going to be coming up on him and why his optimal rate is so high for us. But I get very nervous about Mark Williams. I'll throw that out there.
Yeah, it is, they're resting all of their other key guys. So, what do they really want to be doing with Mark Williams and his playing time? Like, it stands to reason you'd think he gets more usage, but it's not like he creates for himself who's actually going to get him the basketball. People in chat asking about KJ Simpson. He's in the G League. He's not even active on the team. So you've got Salon and KJ Simpson both in the G League. And off the top of my head, those are the only guys I could think of that are like normal guys from Charlotte that we would consider that are in the G League right now. So we got Salon and KJ Simpson in the G League. Then you got LaMelo Ball and Miles Bridges out for tonight. Josh Okogie also out. He's been out for a little bit. Doubt he returns this season. So that's why we've got the Charlotte Hornets being so shorthanded. And some other guys like KJ Simpson, it really does matter that he's in the G League because he usually picks up some of these guard minutes. As a result, you have to feel at least pretty good about the workload for guys like Damian Bow and Nick Smith Jr., who we've projected really well right now, and not even in crazy minutes projections. We got 30 minutes to Damian Bow. We got 32 minutes to Nick Smith Jr. Are there any low-owned pieces from Charlotte that you look at and you go, I'll take shots on that guy?
Yeah, I mean, not low-owned. Wendell Moore's pulling ownership. Daquan Jeffries is pulling ownership. I'm just kind of working through this team in the minutes that we have. I do think Josh Green is interesting at 3,900. Not normally a big usage guy whatsoever, but he's sub 10% right now. He has major minutes upside. I think everybody does here. If somebody gets hot, why wouldn't you just keep Josh Green out there? We saw him put up 37 against San Antonio recently in a game that shot out completely. He's playing that like 28, 29 minute type role. He has upwards of 32 minutes within the last 4 games with more bodies active. Like, I think Josh Green is at least interesting, but I mean, how many times have we also had Seth Curry just come from obscurity over the course of the last 2 years? And I think that that's somebody that it's like, hey, Seth Curry day, we'll give him 24 minutes of run for absolutely no reason. Like, I think that's kind of the thing that we're running into now is that, like the Quentin Grimes thing yesterday, totally understand why we at Stokastic and why people across the industry projected him the way that he did. But it was kind of on the assumption that certain teams are going to do certain things. And Quentin Grimes has like a 35% usage rate over the course of the last 5 games, like just dumb shit. And it's so hard to be able to like predict exactly what the minutes are going to be game to game. We're making predictions on what teams are tanking. Like Charlotte is not actively trying to win this basketball game. Like we can all agree on that. But where do the minutes go? Who gets more run for whatever reason? I think that is the thing you kind of want to be able to embrace on some of these slates and tournaments with, just 4 games, 17,000 lineups in the main contest on DK, 59,000 in a mini max that you're trying to beat. Like, you really do want to find your way onto guys like Josh Green, Seth Curry. I don't know if I can pull the trigger on Marcus Garrett. He hasn't eclipsed the 20-minute mark in his 3, but I definitely have interest in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of the 10 guys that we have projected over on DK right now.
Yeah. And I mean, keep in mind also, it's a 4-game slate. So what's wildly different about a 4-game slate compared to say like last night's 10-game slate is first off, less porn on the post lock show. That's going to be one difference. Your other difference as well is yesterday there wasn't really a need to go way off the board for like you didn't have to go and roster Quentin Jackson for the Pacers or anything like that because you had so much more apparent value. For today, where it's different, it's only a 4-game slate. There's less options. So if you were to take a shot on somebody like Seth Curry, who's projecting right now for 16 fantasy points at min price, it's not the craziest thing in the world because of the limited amount of options we have. So the couple of differences about today's slate and yesterday's slate that we laid out there, which, by the way, don't forget, the promo hacked. It's going to be ending in 40 minutes. So if you guys do want to sign up for a weekly package here and get yourself 69% off, use the link down below in the YouTube description box. Enter that promo code hacked. Any NBA DFS weekly package, you get the discount when you enter that promo code. It's our make good for what ended up happening last night. Let's look also at the FanDuel ownership, and we'll look at what the Charlotte Hornets guys are looking like on FanDuel. So the ownership for the Charlotte players on the FanDuel side of things, we've got Bow projected for 83% ownership, which once again, he's going to be very popular, not quite that high. But with that said, I assume that once I update lineups for the Jason Tatum and the Boston situation, Bow's probably going to be in just about all of my lineups. At the very least, I assume he'll be in 80+% of them. If that's different, I'll let you guys know when all of that's updated. Nick Smith, 58% owned. We got Mark Williams, 35% owned, 32% ownership to Daquan Jeffries. And then you got under 20% ownership to Wendell Moore, mid-teens ownership on Josh Green. Nobody else really pulling ownership here on FanDuel. Anything that really stands out to you as being a stark difference between FanDuel and DK as far as the Hornets guys go?
No, it's more of just like me ruminating over the starting lineup. Like, pull up the starting lineup page because I think that this is probably the thing that is more interesting than talking about the individual ownership right now. It's going to be the first game of the slate. It's going to lock at 7 p.m. Eastern time, 4 p.m. Pacific. We're all going to be able to react to what the starting lineup is, but it's going to change. Like all of what we're seeing on the screen right now, in my opinion, is going to change based on what this NBA projected starters page ends up coming to fruition. We have right now Bow, Nick Smith Jr., Josh Green, Daquan Jeffries, and Mark Williams starting. I'm thinking that that's the chalk, but there's Wendell Moore in the range of outcomes. There's Moussa Diabate in the range of outcomes, who isn't even like projected on either site for anything whatsoever. I don't think Marcus Garrett does. Again, I think he's just a body that is doing the 18, 20 minutes a night, whatever we need him to do thing in order to tank correctly. I'm a little bit surprised to see absolutely nobody wants to play Josh Green sub 15% at 4,100 shooting guard eligibility. Fills a difficult position. I think that there's a lot of things that can push and pull based on the starting lineup, but similar to DK, I think everybody rightfully pulling ownership at that top, Bow, Smith, Daquan Jeffries. Again, the Mark Williams thing, I will really be paying attention to. You can only play the one center over on FanDuel, so that becomes exponentially more important. But I look through the roster, and I think something's going to change based on this starting lineup.
Yeah, and The biggest difference to me between FanDuel, well, a couple of differences, but one thing that you didn't mention that does make a difference to me, I'm not as willing to take shots on Seth Curry over on FanDuel unless he ends up starting.
Fair.
It's twofold. Number one, he is $3,700 over on FanDuel. And then you also lose the 3-point bonus, which is where a lot of his value comes from. So Seth Curry is somebody who I don't think looks as good as an off-the-board play on FanDuel as he does on DraftKings. Otherwise, everything you said, I'm more or less in alignment with, and definitely am agreeing with that. Boston Celtics, we'll look at them as soon as an update comes. Let's see if we have any questions from you guys. And here we go. We got a couple of super chats. If you guys have a question in Discord, hit me up in Discord. I'm on the lookout for any questions that we get from our customers, which also, if you sign up for any package, does come with access to that Discord channel. Mustang Man Mike wants to know top plays on FanDuel. Yeah, when I rerun Sims, we get data update. We could definitely look at some of the top plays at each position. That should be coming shortly. CTG Policia, this is the actual police here, says they had to fake a hack or else somebody was going to get fired. Nah, didn't have to fake it. That was not that was not how any of us planned to spend our Monday night. That was a real deal hack. That was something that happened. Also, another thing too, I will promise you this, and I think Eric would agree with this. If it was somebody that we actually knew, I wouldn't cover for somebody doing that. I would have no problem firing somebody over that. I'm not covering for somebody doing that on the channel.
Yeah, no. Hitler plus gay porn equals, probably a pretty valid fire. If I'm just throwing it out there, just maybe that's just a personal opinion or something, but I think that there are grounds for such a thing in that event. Just absolute madness. Why are people the way that they are? We will never understand, but we continue on trying to fight for good. EMAC 2028.
Not that much good, but more we fight for neutrality.
Yeah.
We fight for neutrality and to be decent on occasion. On occasion. This was a lot of people speculate it was Josh, other people.
Somebody said Brandon Katz. That made me sad.
Brandon Katz. I mean, other people, there was rumors that it was just something that came from Eric's personal video collection. There was a lot of rumors. There was a lot of rumors that were circulating.
Nobody had that rumor.
Yeah, a few people.
Nobody had that rumor.
Yeah. The rumors were circulating. Anyway, we do have a projection update here for the Boston Celtics. So we'll go ahead and look at Boston, and then we'll get to more, because we're getting a lot of questions about like individual players, but I think it makes most sense to look at the actual updated projections and the situations before we go and look at the slate as a whole. But Boston Celtics now, who it's not only Jason Tatum that's out for Boston, Eric. This is a team that's quite shorthanded for today. And I think that we could anticipate just about every game for Boston over the next, there's 3.5 weeks left in the regular season. Mm-hmm. I don't know that the Celtics are going to field a healthy roster for a single one of those remaining games. Jason Tatum's out. Jaylen Brown is also out. Those are the two highest usage guys on the team. And now that creates a little bit of a trickle-down effect. And then also kind of an interesting situation because somebody like Kristaps Porzingis, he missed a bunch of time with an injury it was an illness. And we've seen him play not all that, I know he played 31 and a half minutes last game against the Nets. It was also the first time he had played, they held him out for 2.5 weeks because of an illness. What do you think is the upside we could see for Porzingis' minutes? We have him in for 28 right now.
28 is low. And again, I think it's conservative and it's appropriate to be conservative. He played 31 right from the jump. Mm-hmm. And I would expect him to lead this team in usage. I know Drew Holiday decided to go out and chuck it up every single time he touched the ball in Miami last time out. Brooklyn, a little bit more just playing through Drew Holiday. I'm not sure what it is this time of year. They start to get these guys going. It's like, oh, Pritchard's had a pretty good streak here. Let's get Drew going. Oh, let's get Derek White going. Let's get Jaylen Brown going. Let's get Tatum it's just kind of wild and calculated. I really appreciate this about Boston, but I think that there's a lot of minute edges to squeeze out of certain things. We've got Milwaukee on the LA, not back to back. They're going to be Wednesday off. I think Thursday they go and play the Lakers, but they're in the middle of a dogfight. 4, 5, 6 are all within a game. Milwaukee, Indy, and Detroit. But the top three are kind of solid. It would take some wild swings, some definite streaks here as we finish out the season. Cleveland is 7.5 up for the 1 seed on Boston. The Knicks are 6.5 back of Boston for the 3 seed. Like, these are pretty noticeable gaps. They're kind of on islands, and I think it do all 3 teams well to calculate and stagger some of their rest spots here going forward. It's something that I talked about a little bit on the betting show yesterday. Didn't know what would really be actionable, but I was pretty convinced Tatum would sit here. So it's not surprising that we're getting this value, but I'm 100% with you. I think that there's definitely an attention we should have, especially like if Boston ends up out west soon, or if Cleveland ends up, they're out west right now. The Evan Mobley news. We're going to be sitting on that here for the next however long. Cleveland's way up. They don't need to play Evan Mobley today. So I definitely lean towards him sitting as well. These are things that I think help us make more calculated decisions than having this be January where every team is still kind of fighting for positioning.
Yeah, and just an update on the injury news that is currently pending. You had mentioned Evan Mobley. He's questionable to play today. Brandon Pajemski, he is currently questionable. Quinton Post is questionable. And that's it for players who are currently questionable. We got the Tatum news already. We got the LaMelo Ball news. And here's what we have for the actual projections for the Boston guys. We've got Derek White and Kristaps Porzingis projected for 39 and 37.5 fantasy points. Peyton Pritchard in for 28.5 fantasy points. Drew Holiday for 28 fantasy points. 26 to Al Horford. 22 for Sam Hauser. 18 for Luke Cornett. 13 for Kata. It looks like what we're projecting is for the Celtics to be really conservative today. And even the guys who are in, we're currently projecting them to get pretty limited minutes. We've got, other than 34 to Derek White, we've got Porzingis for 28. We've got Peyton Pritchard for 27. Obviously, they could just play all these guys full minutes, but considering that they're already holding a bunch of guys out, this could just be a game where it's like everybody plays like 28 to 30 minutes and you just run like that 5th grade rec league rotation where it's like everybody gets a turn.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like last night on Playback too, but we definitely have ways of like looking at this slate differently. Like, I think what's a fun talking point, and we don't go like position by position where we like sit and like really focus in on what we're talking about. We'll like bounce around and say our favorite plays at each position. And then we'll go to like the opportunity cost of point guard, shooting guard today is ginormous. We have Damian Bow. We have Nick Smith Jr. We have Derek White. We have Dyson Daniels, who I think is a really, really good play because he steals the ball like 6 times a game. It's the dumbest shit ever. Drew Holiday, I think, is still very interesting based on what that ownership ends up being in that same situation. Peyton Pritchard, where he can be a lower owned option out of all of those guys that I just threw out there. That's a lot of guys that I just said point guard, shooting guard. If you're playing single entry, I don't think it's just slam Nick Smith Jr. along with Damian Bow. Like, I think Bow at 3K definitely sits on an island in a tier of his own. But figuring out what those next 2 guard spots I really want to have be, or do I want to play one in the utility? I think that this is a huge talking point of the slate as we get closer to lock with. It's probably going to be dictated by that Charlotte starting lineup for sure.
And we have for ownership on the Boston Celtics, we have here 51% ownership going to Derek White, 20% ownership to Drew Holiday. Nobody else pulling ownership, though. 13 to Pritchard, 12 for Horford, 11 to Porzingis, 10 to Sam Hauser. With Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum out, like, I think it's reasonable that we're expecting there to be a possibility of this being a pretty sped out rotation, Eric. I like taking shots on guys like Porzingis. Like, if Porzingis is actually only going to be 10% owned on a 4-game slate with no Jaylen Brown and no Jason Tatum, like you mentioned, 31 minutes for him in his first game back, doesn't mean he has to play those minutes again today, but I'm willing to take chances on him in tournaments if the field isn't playing him.
Oh, big time. I think he's probably the guy that, as I'm kind of like just going back and forth, boom, bust, and then taking a look at our data hub here over in the Sims tool, kind of like piecing together what my game plan needs to be for late swap. Like, I guess the question becomes, if you're going to use a spot on Kristaps Porzingis and Evan Mobley gets ruled out, you'd be kind of kicking yourself you didn't have Jared Allen. I can't imagine anybody's going to replace him. Like, DeAndre Hunter, I think, steps in. He's kind of the obvious guy that would step in, play like the quote unquote 3 or 4. You could call Max Strus a 4. I don't really care how you break it down. But like, I think that no matter what, center is one of those spots with Quinton Post questionable there. I don't know. There's just like this weird feeling that I get that it's like a Kevon Looney slate. I don't know why that is here. It's the only thing that keeps me from wanting to like full send Kristaps Porzingis at this kind of ownership. But obviously I'll let the Sims tool do its thing. I got to change some of the projections where I want to have like some theoreticals where you take Quentin Post off the floor. We got the starting lineup. Seth Curry is starting. I just had a feeling. I had that feeling. And we didn't get frickin' Nick Smith Jr.
Yeah, this is now we're gonna. I just ran Sims to
I
update
told you it was
for everything.
Why would you do that? Why would you do that?
Because the slate starts in 28 minutes and we're doing content. I wanted to let people know who it is that I'm playing as of right now. And then you get this, super weird starting lineup that I didn't see coming from the Charlotte Hornets. Bow, Curry, Green, Jeffries, Mark Williams. Curry looks much better now that he's starting. Like we said before, he was somebody who I was willing to take chances on DraftKings, but wasn't on FanDuel. Now that he's starting, I'm okay taking chances with him on FanDuel, but Curry looks a lot better on DraftKings as a starter. But more importantly, what does this do to Nick Smith, and what should the expectation be for his playing time now?
You should try to get as much money down on shorting him as humanly possible. He's on Prize Picks at 17.5 points.
Trying to figure out. I still think he plays a decent. By the way, I think under 17.5 points.
Big number.
Good luck either way. For DFS purposes, though, I'm trying to figure out like how many minutes we should expect from him coming off the bench, what that means for his potential upside. Like, I guess you just safely put him in for like upper 20s minutes. I still think he's part of the rotation. It's hard to expect somebody to come off the bench and play 30 plus minutes. So I don't know, 26 to 28 minutes for Nick Smith. Still puts him in play, but he doesn't look nearly as great of an option as he did before.
No, he does not. I guess my big question is, how many minutes do we expect from Mark Williams if they're going to just roll out trash like this and they get completely obliterated?
What's the spread for... The spread isn't even that wide for this game.
By the way, that line is just sitting there on Prize Picks, just not moving. I just jammed it. So
the line for the game is 8.5 points. So I can't really reasonably expect it to blow out just with it being an 8.5 point line. As far as Mark Williams, somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 minutes.
Okay. I have him under that. I can't get to the 30-minute mark. He hasn't hit it in 5 straight. It's had competitive games where he was in no foul trouble. He's been in 0 foul trouble at all. He's one of the better bigs at avoiding foul trouble. I think he's been in like foul trouble 1 or 2 games.
Easy to do when you don't play defense.
It helps. It helps to not play defense to avoid getting fouls. But 24, 29, 26, 29, 25. We have blowouts in the middle of that. We have some nukes where they beat up on San Antonio in the middle of that. I'm just going to put him at 28 and live with it and kind of move on with my life. What is Nick Smith Jr.'s ownership going to get to? And also, I can't project him for over 20 minutes now. Like, he's played.
No. I still think Nick Smith plays over 20 minutes.
You sure?
Yeah. I think the most likely scenario is over 20 minutes from Nick Smith. I think like 26 to 28.
If he's playing well, he won't.
Who else is playing point guard minutes then?
Oh, you're just going to play Bow and you're going to play like,
those are the only 2 point guards on the roster, Nick Smith and Bow.
Yeah. You're just going to play Bow in a million minutes, I think is probably what you're going to do. Like, Bow is unavoidable. Bow is the most unavoidable piece of chalk that we've had since Thomas Bryant yesterday, which is ironic. But I'd say he'll be top 2 at 100% at both of them. But I don't know what I'm supposed to do other than roll out 100% Bow and just kind of trying to make sure that I still have some exposure to Nick Smith Jr. As you said, like I assume the ownership just comes plummeting now. Mm-hmm. And it definitely makes it more accessible to get to the Peyton Pritchards, Drew Holidays, Derek Whites of the world. Like I assume with Nick Smith Jr., this next update, he goes from 52 to like 25. And I think we see Derek White go from like 50 to 60. Like, I'd be very surprised to see Derek White not as like the chalkiest piece on the slate, not named Damian Bow.
Yeah. I mean, we already had Derek White projected for just a shit ton of ownership.
A ton more coming.
You think so? You think he'll be I don't know how much higher he'll be than 51%.
Yeah, I suppose he's 7,300. Boy, oh boy, what a slate we got. What a slate we have.
Yeah, so what I think is going to end up happening here, like I don't doubt that Derek White becomes a little bit more popular. We had the 50% projected ownership on Nick Smith. He probably comes down to ownership in the teens, and then I think that it just gets reallocated across other players on the slate. Like Seth Curry was only projected for what was it, 3% ownership. Like he'll pull some ownership now. That's going to be the biggest gainer in ownership when we lose the Nick Smith ownership. And then I think the rest of it just kind of gets spread out. Like, I don't think Derek White goes from 50 to 70% owned now.
Okay. Gotcha.
We'll see, though. We'll have an update in a couple of minutes, and I could absolutely have egg on my face. Also something we saw last night. And it could just be a totally different scenario. And then I could be like, you know what? I was wrong here. Derek White's super popular, but I don't know what to make of Nick Smith. My expectation is still that he plays like 26 to 28 minutes, though.
Yeah, then I'm going to want to be overweight. We'll kind of push and pull. Again, these are things I don't know the answer. You don't know we don't know the answer, but I think what you want to do is you want to trust the data, that it's going to put you in the best place to succeed. And there's no doubt that we got our guy Rich on the projections today. I always love when it's a nice Tuesday with Rich on the projections, where I know he's going to be in chat. He's going to talk shit about me. And at the same time, it's all from a loving place, because we're all trying to do the same thing, help you and help ourselves win a frick ton of money. So I don't know. I do want to be very ownership conscious of anybody coming off the bench. Seth Curry, what are you going to do with this guy? This is like exactly the nightmare that I was talking about. He is a flat 3K, bro.
So here's what we have. We don't have updated ownership yet. We do have updated projections. And listen, I said I thought Nick Smith plays 26 to 28 minutes. Rich split the difference, went with a 27-minute projection, which, once again, he still looks fine. 25.5 fantasy points at $4,700. It's a guy who's in play, but his ownership is going to be quite a bit lower. I think we see him somewhere in the neighborhood of like 20-ish% owned or something like that when that gets updated. Seth Curry looks really strong now. We've got him projected for 22 fantasy points at 3K. Seth Curry, I think we're going to see Seth Curry's ownership. Like I said, I think Seth Curry becomes really popular now.
Good. God, this is so frustrating, because I mean, this first game out of the gate, we have late news coming, and I don't even know how I would nuke of the night Kevon Looney at this point. Like, it's such an awful risk to make relative to some of these Charlotte pieces that are just kind of guaranteed to get way more opportunity. And if you get Quinn Post in, which I don't know what to make of that news, if you get him in, then it's pretty obsolete to have any Kevon Looney, and you're just kind of more egg on the face, less of Greg's version of it, just straight up egg, not feeling good.
So let's see what we have for our ownership updated. Here we go. All right, updated ownerships. We now have Bow in for 93% ownership, 40% ownership to Seth Curry, Daquan Jeffries, 27% owned, Mark Williams, 23% owned, Wendell Moore, 21% owned, Nick Smith now at 15% ownership. So yeah, like just kind of eyeballing it, this isn't all that surprising to me as far as their DraftKings updated ownerships now. And on the FanDuel side of things, when it comes to Charlotte, we have Bow in for 76% ownership, Nick Smith at 40%, Mark Williams 33%, Daquan Jeffries 30%, Seth Curry 24%, Wendell Moore 13%. Then we got Josh Green in there for 10%. So Nick Smith remains very popular on FanDuel, but he's also only $4,200 there.
Boy, oh boy. Yuck to everything. This is going to be wild, friends. This is going to be absolutely wild.
Yeah, this is a lot of moving parts also pull up. We didn't look at the updated ownership from the Boston Celtics on FanDuel. We only looked at it over on DraftKings, because then we got interrupted by the bizarre starting lineup for the Charlotte Hornets. But on the FanDuel side of things, Derek White is 62% owned, Porzingis 20% owned, Drew Holiday, we've got him at 19% ownership, Pritchard 14% owned, Al Horford 13% owned. And then I'll also go back to DraftKings to see what the Hornets starting lineup, if that had any kind of impact on the Celtics ownership. So Derek White actually came down in ownership a little bit. So it's more or less the same though, but he's at 48% now. Drew Holiday, 21%, Peyton Pritchard, 18%, 12% to both Porzingis and Horford, then 10% to Sam Hauser. So that's what we have for the updated projections here on the Boston Celtics. As far as the other plays on the entire slate, here's what we have for the overall most rostered options. Here's what also has become really popular. Giannis Antetokounmpo, Eric. He is now 70% owned because we've got all this value and a lack of other guys to pay up for. So here's another interesting part of the slate. Giannis being 70% owned, is he just kind of like a necessity because of the amount of value and lack of other pay up options? He's 11,500. The next most expensive guy is James Harden at 10,300. He projects for 12 less fantasy points. Are we just going to kind of get forced to play a lot of Giannis?
Yes. And what I think you can do is, I mean, I'm planning on being right around the field on Trae Young at 40%. I'll probably be able to react to how those lineups do and how I want to break it down. We do have another spend up, at least in James Harden, where if you're trying to trim ownership or if you're coming from behind in single entry, if you're trying to do some things, I've been playing a lot more single entry the last few weeks. Will again today, in addition to playing 20 max, not playing my full 150, but I think that just kind of sitting around the field on a Trae Young and then being able to play off of like with the 60% of lineups that don't have him with Harden and Giannis and whatever news happens later, I think it should be pretty easy to kind of work it around. I'll say this again. The Mark Williams ownership freaks me the hell out. You said it before. Same thing. He has nobody creating for him. He has no 30-minute upside unless this game is going to overtime. Like, they will not play him 30 plus minutes, it would appear, based on what I'm looking at on Popcorn Machine. They just don't want to extend his minutes there. They have Nurkic and Diabate that, can play the backup center minutes. Nurkic's minutes have been extremely muted over the last few as well. So it's super frustrating looking at that front court trying to mine something out. But like, in terms of like where we want to spend money, if you're not going to play Giannis, I think you just have to jam Dame. Like, Dame ends up being like your leverage off of Giannis. Like, lineups without Giannis, I would be very hard pressed not to just have Dame, hoping for, I mean, this has happened a lot recently where a lot of Giannis's massive, like 35, 40 point potentials end up being Damian Lillard 55 point outings and 49 from Giannis, which, might even be enough on this slate just because of how few other spend ups we have. But like, I think I'm willing to roll the dice and just kind of boost. If I'm going to boost one player right now, it's probably going to be Dame in some of those lineups with Trae Young. If Trae Young has a massive game, and then potential trying to like work off of some Giannis somehow.
Hey, I like that. I think that's a really, really reasonable leverage option. And with that in mind, Eric, you know what we should do right now?
Nuke of the night.
Okay, I was going to say sex, but we could do that too. All right, 4-game slate. We've had more moving parts than I thought would have been possible for this 4-game slate over the course of the show here, Eric. So I want to know, where have you settled here? Where do you want to go for your nuke of the night?
I so badly want it to be Kevon Looney. Like, I really, really do. But I think it's just foolish at this point with all this value we have for Charlotte. Atlanta had value already, I think, with Karis LeVert out of there again. Vic Krejci is at least helping it out so you don't have to like move your way onto tons of these guys. I think you just want to filter them inappropriately, but like Charlotte is so unavoidable to me. But I look at the late night window and there is just one piece in that Evan Mobley piece that I think is probably the quiet portion of this slate. Like, I love Donovan Mitchell in tournaments. We don't have a ton of spend up options here. So I know Rich will like this one up there in Cleveland, but Donovan Mitchell and the Clippers have had an interesting relationship. Obviously, going back to the Utah days, Donovan Mitchell got completely tooled by Terrence Mann in a game 6 that completely blew up that Utah basketball team. But Donovan Mitchell, if you get Evan Mobley off the floor, Evan Mobley's just been so much better offensively under Kenny Atkinson's offense. Like, it's just been dynamic. You do have Ty Jerome. You do have, Darius Garland out there as well, but their price is not exactly where I want him to be. An 8K Darius Garland up against up against the Clippers here. No doubt it's a difficult matchup, but that's why you're getting 8%. And if you're trying to find ways of getting different on this slate, getting away from some of the ownership, I mean, Damian Lillard's projected for more. I think that's more clear cut. He's 15, 16% owned, but I think if you can have 100, what do you need? 300 more to find your way onto a little bit more Donovan Mitchell in the event that, you want to upgrade that piece, or if you place him over Evan Mobley and he ends up in, you can move off of some Donovan Mitchell. But I do think Cleveland's up enough here where this might be not a punt, because they're still very, very capable of winning this basketball game without Evan Mobley. But I'm under the impression that this is a good spot to sit him. They're still favored. I like Donovan Mitchell a lot in this spot. They're going to be in a competitive game, which Cleveland doesn't always do. Nuke of the night.
Yeah, so I'm looking through my now updated lineups, and for myself, I'm going to go with somebody I brought up before, Kristaps Porzingis. There's a really wide range of outcomes for his minutes, but what's most important here, there's opportunity for increased usage. There's no Jaylen Brown. There's no Jason Tatum. The field isn't playing him. The field is rostering him at 12% as if he's just a guy who's going to play limited minutes. It certainly could be the case, but if he just plays normal minutes, he's in position to carry big usage and just really, really crush here. I also think he serves as potential leverage off of Derek White if it's Kristaps Porzingis who's the guy who's taking more of the shots. So I'm really surprised to see how low owned Kristaps Porzingis is. I want to be well overweight to the field on him.
Yeah, I love the Porzingis piece too. I like Porzingis more than I like Mark Williams. I'm just going to say this. Like, if Mark Williams goes off, I'm not going to win today. I'm going to be way underweight to Mark Williams. I get that he might have all of the usage opportunity, but like, who's going to be giving him the ball in the post? Okongwu, not the best defender by any means. Do not get me wrong there. This could go very, very poorly, but he is 8,100, and there are a lot of people that are playing him healthy amount here. I think I'm going to wait on that. I don't want to use that salary up there. I'd rather spend it elsewhere. I'm with you. Kristaps Porzingis 7,800 looks awesome.
All right, let's get to your guys' questions and your super chats now that we've got everything updated, and we should be good to go here. Mustang Man Mike wants to know 5 must plays on FanDuel today. And thanks, guys. Boy, there are a lot of players we consider really strong sort of must play kind of options. I'm going to say Giannis is a pay up option on the cheap end. And I know some of these guys are really popular, but like, I don't know how you get away from Damian Bow, Giannis, or Derek White. I think all of them look really good. Jimmy Butler as well in the absence of Steph Curry. I think he's going to have to take on a much bigger role for the Golden State Warriors. And then I'll throw in Porzingis as a contrarian option that I like on FanDuel. I know he might not fit into a must-play sort of category, but just want to give you somebody that I like as a contrarian GPP option on both sites. We've got Kristaps Porzingis, who is just over 10% owned over on DraftKings. He is 20% owned on FanDuel, so a little bit more popular, but I still think that there's a wiggle room for more upside than that. Anybody you would add as a must kind of play on FanDuel, Eric?
I have one guy that I really want to see the price. I'm not playing FanDuel today, and I think I'm about to be mad if this guy is as cheap as he is. Yeah, he's 3,900. If you get Quentin Post out, who do we think starts?
If Quentin Post is out, yeah, probably Looney. I mean, they could also, let's see, match up against Cleveland. Here's where it kind of gets weird. I think it might matter whether Evan Mobley's in or out because there's a little more.
They're playing Milwaukee. They're playing Milwaukee. Golden State and Milwaukee.
Yeah. Never mind. My bad.
That's okay.
I was thinking that they're playing Cleveland. I'll agree with you. I think Looney. You're going to say Looney. I think Looney is most likely.
I think Looney's the most likely guy. He's 3,900 and just completely different. I guess Gui Santos is like potential if they want to go dream on it. I just don't see how you do that against Brolo and Giannis. Like I don't. So I just keep going back to Looney as like this dude. I wanted to nuke him so bad. I just feel so dumb for like, I try not to be hot takey. Like, I know that sounds weird and you probably think that that's what I sound like all the time, but like I'm trying to do data-driven things where it's like, all right, if he's out, what ends up being the minutes potential for this guy that is projected for 0% ownership right now? Like he's projected for 0.2% ownership on FanDuel. I think he's one of the best plays after the fact if this news breaks and people aren't reacting to it whatsoever, which is very likely when lineup spots are going to get used up early.
The next question we have here is from Chris Albers. Who do you think is a 5% owned guy that'll be in the winning lineup today? Probably nobody. I don't think there'll be anybody who's 5% owned lower or 5% owned or lower who's in the winning lineup.
I'm with you.
Anybody that you would that comes to mind for you? Also, I mean, if Looney starts, he's not going to be 5% owned. He's going to be super chalky. So
it seems. I mean, how many people can move around? Like what are the cheap pieces even going off in the evening window?
But for the question is who is 5% owned or less that's going to be in the winning lineup? So my answer is anybody.
Please be Looney, because now I'm just gonna.
He's not going to be 5. So here's what's going to happen though. He's either not going to start, or he's going to start. He's going to be more than 5% owned.
Oh, so I'm fucked either way. I can't even give an answer.
No, you're not fucked. It's just I'm trying to answer the question. And I just don't look at anybody being sub 5% and be like, oh, this guy is some crazy great play that the field is missed. It's a 4-game slate. There aren't that many viable players who are sub 5% owned.
Yeah, you don't need to find a 5% guy on these slates. I think people try to get too cute. I mean, even Gary Payton played infinity minutes yesterday. He's not a great fantasy performer with everybody out, shooting guard, small forward. Doesn't have as much utility on this slate where shooting guard is just stacked, but 3,900 for Gary Payton. He's still 8.5%. Like, you have to go way down to the bottom of the barrel. I'll throw somebody out just because, you still have all of these pieces out for, Karis LeVert specifically. That's the main guy that matters the most. Vic Krejci played 27 minutes against Brooklyn. He was working back from injury. If we just start to see him play mid to high 20s minutes, he's a decent enough fantasy performer. Vic Krejci, sub 5%. Like, I'm okay with that purely because of how many Charlotte pieces are going to be along for the ride. And nobody's going to play him. So I'm trying to make a case for somebody. I have one lineup of 40 that has Vic Krejci in it, but just looking at my lineups, I think he's the answer that isn't Kevon Looney right now in the sub 5% category. But yeah, exactly what Greg said. He'll be a lot higher than that in the event that news breaks my way.
We've got a super chat from Sam Van Dam. He says, what am I doing with the Charlotte Bigs? So you're either playing a modestly owned Mark Williams or playing nobody.
Correct.
Like, I don't really like any of the other pieces from Charlotte as far as the front court goes. So if we look at the ownership right now on Charlotte and some of the player projections, we've got right around 20% ownership to Mark Williams. I don't want to take shots on Diabate or Nurkic for today. Mark Williams, I think, is an upside GPP play. There's downside to him as well, but he's not crazy popular. And Nurkic, Diabate, none of them are guys who I want to look to roster.
Yeah, my main thing is like Nurkic won't play blowout run. We had no blowout run for him against the Clippers. He played 12 minutes, 11 minutes against Atlanta. It was a blowout until it wasn't. They just aren't going to give him a leash. So Diabate will play blowout run. Like, I know this is weird, but at their current ownerships, I would rather roll out a lineup of Diabate rather than Nurkic, but I'm not playing either. I'm glad that we're on the same page there because I do think the projection is probably going to get enough people on to some form of Nurkic. Like, it's projected for 19.3. We have enough minutes going his direction. Is it terrifying? Yeah. But overall, you're better off, I think, in the long run, just not playing anybody other than Mark Williams. I'm probably not going to play any of the three of them, if I'm being honest.
All right, rapid fire through the questions that we got that came into Discord. If you guys haven't done yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Shout out to Chris Williams, who gifted out 5 YouTube memberships. Playback, there won't be a post-lock show, but we're going to have the games on screen. So if you guys want to hang out in there, watch the games and sweat them out, hopefully just sweating the games, not sweating anything else, that'll be available to you over in Playback. Also, only 5 minutes left in our Hacked promo. Sign up through the link down below in the YouTube description box. Promo code HACKED. Get yourself an NBA weekly package for 69% off. Coach DFS, DK, and FanDuel single bullet locks. Yeah, so the guys overall that I would call, but for 4-game slate, it's kind of hard to call certain guys like locks. The only one for me that's like an actual lock is Damian Bow.
Damian Bow. I'm playing Curry and Jeffries, I think, in single entry as well. So I'm not going to call them locks. I don't think I'm in love with the Bow or with the Jeffries piece. I just think they've been giving him a crazy, crazy amount of minutes. And Giannis is a must play. Giannis is a must play now in single entry. The more that I run it, he just looks insane. You just need to play him. I I'm going to play some Mitchell. I'm going to play some Lillard, but I'm probably going to just jam Giannis when it's all said and done now.
Easy Denobi, I did not pronounce that correctly, in chat says, thanks for the advice on the archetype for the big $5 contest yesterday. Made a big difference for him. What archetype should he do for the $4.20 match? Just marquee for me on that one. Krebsy wants to know, is it dumb to play White, Drew Holiday, and Peyton Pritchard together? If you're hand building a lineup, I wouldn't have all three of them together. It's a 4-game slate. It's not the end of the world. I'm not doing anything to take it out of my lineups in The Sims, but if I was hand building a lineup, I wouldn't have all three of them in it.
Yeah,
Ethan Seven, favorite single entry spend up on DK, Giannis.
Yes, Giannis by a large margin.
OKOS, Kristaps or Mark Williams on FanDuel for the same price. I prefer Porzingis for GPPs over on FanDuel.
As do I.
Don't be soy. Good night to use the variance adjuster. Yeah, you could always use the variance adjuster and just set it to like 1.1 or 1.2 or something like that. No issue with that at all. Rabashua, Jimmy Butler or Kawhi Leonard today? That's going to be Jimmy Butler for me. No Steph Curry. The offense is going to have to go through Jimmy Butler. The pace is also going to be so much slower for a Warriors game when the offense goes through Jimmy Butler as opposed to Steph Curry. But either way, Butler, one of the top plays on the slate. I prefer him to Kawhi Leonard. And then OKOS, thoughts on DeAndre Hunter with no Mobley. Keep in mind, Mobley is questionable. He's not out. But DeAndre Hunter would definitely look better in a scenario where Cleveland is out. Is he somebody you'd be looking to get to in that scenario?
I boosted him a little bit. 5,400. Just wanted to get to a little bit.
Mike Will wants to know, is 88% bow too much? I have more than that. I have 98% of them. So 88% totally fine with me. K Sizzle, how many Hornets are too many? Probably anything more than 4 is a little excessive. 4 is reasonable, though. OKOS also says, roster only 3 Hornets on FanDuel if you had to. If I could only roster 3 Hornets, it would probably be Bow, Seth Curry, and Mark Williams. And then White or Porzingis on FanDuel. I still prefer White to Porzingis overall, just relative to ownership. I think Porzingis is a little bit under-owned. And then finally, Clean Sweep wants to know, Eric, I'll let you answer this one. Sorry, I kind of just wanted to get through these.
You're doing awesome. You're doing great.
Clean Sweep, Drew Holiday or Jonathan Kuminga for you, Eric?
Drew Holiday.
All right. Yeah. I mean, how could we not close out today's show with a good old cum bucket question? The nickname, by the way, of Jonathan Kuminga. So,
is it? Is it?
It absolutely is. 100%. That's what the kids call him. It's true.
Cool story, bro.
It's probably even on his basketball. Actually, they might not have that on his basketball reference page, but it is his nickname. Anyway, guys. Oh, no. One more question came in last second here from Stan. Stan0302. DKGPP. Derek White and Draymond Green or Harden and Looney? I'm going to go with White and Draymond Green there. Yeah,
White and Draymond Green.
Yeah, White and Draymond Green for me. You know, I think if the stars align correctly, I definitely agree with Eric. If Looney starts, he looks really good. As things stand right now, though, I prefer the Derek White side. Derek White's one of the top overall plays on the slate. Guys, thank you very much for watching. If you do want to watch the games over on Playback, I'm going to drop the link right now into the YouTube chat. You guys can head on over to Playback and you can watch the games in there. I see some people already there hanging out. So Playback tomorrow, we're going to be having the show going. By the way, it is Sam Hauser starting for the Celtics. So nothing insane with the Celtics starting unit. So if you guys want to go and hang out over in Playback, no shenanigans tonight, hopefully. But who knows? They can't control the internet. So if you guys want to go and watch the games, I'm going to throw that on screen. Got some bets on the board right now. So I'll leave those up for another 30 seconds if anybody wants to go place a bet. Other than that, guys, thank you very much for watching. Like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. And Eric and I'll see you guys back here tomorrow. Peace out.